Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Before we jump into our third segment, a reminder, guys, go ahead and check out Full Sail University if you're at all interested in game design or working in the esports industry. Go to www.fullsail.edu/MLG to get more information on the programs in animation, video production, graphic design, audio engineering, all these types of skill sets that are really essential if you want to go ahead and get that job in the game design or esports industry. www.fullsail.edu/MLG for more information on potential educational opportunities. So our third segment of the day is going to be on a Protoss vs Zerg matchup between Top, one of the best Chinese players, and Killer. This is game 2 of their best of 3 series on 2-base Blink Stalker play. We're going to start off with talking about the gateway timing that Top does, then how to defend that gateway timing correctly, and then how to micro Blink Stalker Sentry, some key things to think about when trying to use this timing attack. And jumping this replay to 6-minute mark. And before I talked about, I think another timing attack was like the 2-base Colossi Immortal timing attack and Sen versus Crank on Belshir Vestige, and that was yesterday's Rules of Engagement. So I actually focused on what really is the most important parts, which is macro. Always focus on macro first and foremost in timing attacks. It's 99% of what determines an attack is how well it's macroed and how well the defender macros, how many units they have. But today we're going to talk more about the micro aspect of this attack because, I mean, there's only so much you can say besides, macro better and streamline the build and stuff like that. So if you have more questions about that, go ahead, tweet your questions about how to streamline your timing builds to me. But this episode is going to be mostly on micro tips and tricks, cool little things you can do. So one thing is important. Notice how Top chrono boosted out his first Blink Stalker. He's chrono boosting out his second, not Blink Stalker, normal Stalker. And the reason you chrono boost these Stalkers out is to take map control. You check your watchtower, make sure there's no Zergling at the watchtower. You cross your opponent's map, keep the Zerglings busy with the Stalker, and that way this probe, while your opponent, of course, can spot it with an Overlord, maybe. Actually, I don't think he did. Normally they often can, but I don't think he did in this case. They might be able to spot it, they might not, but they're too busy dealing with the Stalker to have a really easy time dealing with this probe. So always try to distract your opponent, take map control, because any type of timing attack, at least if you want to put on gateway pressure early on, you have to have those proxy pylons up very early. And we noticed here, Killer, of course, scouting his opponent. A very unique build from Top this game. If you want to check out the entire build, check out the VOD, youtube.com/official MLGSC2 for the actual entire game. But we're just going to talk about, it's basically a gateway pressure, and then what's interesting is the amount of workers he has is 43, so it's a full 2-base economy, but he's only going up to 6 gateways right now, and that's because he also wanted to get a 3rd and 4th gas, he wanted to get +1 armor, he wants to get a Twilight Council. So it's like gateway pressure, but it's not, this attack isn't the real attack. He's transitioning behind it to his secondary 2-base play of Blink Stalkers. Kind of neat little gateway opening. Always remember, clear out the map of the Stalkers so you can get these proxy pylons and your attack can hit much faster. Now, what's really interesting here is from the Zerg point of view, how do you defend these? The first important thing, if they're attacking you with this many units, and you can beat this many units right here, if you're a Zerg and you can beat this, at 9 minutes into the game, you either were going for an all-in, or if you weren't planning to all-in your opponent, you done messed up. Because if you can beat this, that means you don't have 55 drones. You just don't. Right when it hits your base, you either have enough drones to play real game and you have to defend very well, or you can squash this attack and that means you don't have enough drones and you're going to lose 3 minutes from now. So if you're playing it properly, you have a lot of drones, you don't have a lot of units, right? How do you defend this gateway timing? Well, this is exactly what you do. You fake to go for an engagement. Your opponent pulls back because they can't afford to have units straggled out, and then when they come in again, you engage again. So let me actually back this up just a hair. Because one thing that's really neat, in fact, let me see if I can do about it. So when the Zealots come in here, right, what happens? Think about this in this perspective right here. If you're a Protoss player, and you're going to have this group of guys attack in here, right? What happens when they start attacking into a base? Well, let me actually just erase stat lines. Like this cell is going to go and say, I want to kill this drone, right? These Stalkers are all going to say, let's go attack this hatchery. This cell is going to go like, okay, let's go attack this drone over here. Like, your guys are all going to have different missions. They're going to be doing whatever. And even, let's say you give them all the same mission. You say, all attack the hatchery. what's going to happen is their units are going to be in a position like this, right, around the hatchery. However they are, they're going to be a little bit spread out. And as a Zerg player, to buy time for you to get the units you need to defend this attack, because if you look at the production tab, there's like 6 roaches in production. That should be enough, right? But to buy the time without taking damage, what you do is you grab your units up here. Oh, they're higher up there. But you go and you attack this location, and you threaten to sell it, right? You threaten the one that's closest to your army. And maybe they're spread out all over your base. Maybe they're all around the hatchery. However they are, you find the closest one. You grab your army. You tell them to get that guy. Now, the Protoss, they either have to lose all their units and then just have a bad attack, or if they want to control it well, they have to recombine their force from here to pull this guy back here, pull these guys up here, and basically reform a bowl of units. Because Protoss units, they're on a buddy system. They have to stay, shoulder to shoulder so no one gets focused down. They can all handle the onslaught of the numerically superior Zerg numbers by being together. So you pump fake to go for this cell. When they back up in front of the ball, right, then you just retreat again. And you keep doing that over and over again until you have enough units you can go in and do a full engagement. It's like a little micro dance. So that's exactly the type of micro you want to do when trying to defend these gateway timings. We can see, we can see here, that's exactly what it does. See, he does this cell, look at this guy right here. This cell is a guy that's being focused by everyone in Killer's units, right? And then all of a sudden Killer says, okay, these zealots got clumped. I'm going to instead send these Zerglings around to flank the Stalkers and go after the Stalkers. Now, the Protoss says, okay, I can't take this. I have to move these Stalkers back this way, move the Zealots to get in front of the Zerglings, and I have to wait for these 2 Zealots to catch up. So what I'm saying is the Protoss has to re-ball their army with the reinforcements back in a new location, right? And that's actually part of why what's enormous in making this defense work is the fact that his creep spread is out here. So the warp point is back here. And the warp point means that he has to re-ball up back here to meet up with his reinforcements. He doesn't warp in right into battle. And because of that, he has to back up. And that backing up basically meant there was no drones killed. Only the hatchery was scratched. And now all of a sudden there's enough roaches that Top has to retreat, right? Of course, Top wasn't intending to win the game with that attack. He was trying to put in some light pressure. He was trying to get the Zerg to not make too many drones and trying to get them to go Hydra-less, slow their attack, etc. So not going forward, it's going to be the next attack still. 2 base economy actually probably made it maybe 2 more probes than 1 2, but 48 is actually a good number for 2 base timing as well. Usually between the 45 to 48 number for a 10-minute plus 2 base timing is where we're going to be at. Now he's coming back. He has 1-1 upgrades. He's working on +2. Blink's almost done. He's heading across the map to put on that attack. He's fast forward when it happens. And Killer, of course, he knows his opponent has out their base. He knows it's going to be gateway heavy timing, most likely with Blink at this point in the game. And this is where the micro is really cool here, right? So the time warp goes down preemptively just to keep the Zerg back right now because Top wasn't quite ready to engage. He wants to wait for this pylon before he really wants to commit engagement. And Killer is splitting his army up into 2 to set up amazing flanks, right? And when your opponent tries to do these things with flanks, there's 2 micro concepts, right? One is if your opponent has all the units in one section, when you come in to engage right here, right? Let's do right here, right? Or let me back this up just a second before he hits those. Right there. So if your opponent is coming at you from this angle, right? You have to look at the number of units they have. So right here he sees there's only, like 10 Hydras, 2 Roaches. That's not his full army. Top, of course, he has a military corps back behind his army. He knows there's a flank setup. Let's say there wasn't. Let's say there was twice as many units here. If your opponent has their entire army coming from one direction, the proper way to use force fields is you cut their army in half. Basically, with this timing versus Zerg, the goal is Zerg has more economy, but they don't have a way to deal with force fields. They don't have any mitigating spells of their own. They don't have any fungal growth infestors. They don't have any blinding cloud vipers. They don't have any ultralists. They don't have any mutalists that can snipe your sentries. They don't have any swarm hosts that can make you use force fields on free units like locusts, right? They just have roaches and hydralists, nothing to really make to deal with force fields efficiently. So your goal is to be cost efficient. The way you're cost efficient is by engaging only half their army at the same time. The full army is up here. You cut it in half with force fields. So ideally you do force fields like right here, right? And these units you would kill. Because this many Stalkers versus only 6-7 Roaches, or 6-7 Hydras, excuse me. You're going to kill the Hydras, and with Blink, you're not going to lose a single unit. Without blink, you would lose 1 Stalker. But either way, even if you got bad blink micro, the force fields are good. You're going to kill very cost efficiently. But if you know your opponent is flanking you, to fight half their army at a time, you don't want to cut their army in half with force fields. You want to block it off entirely, right? Just block it off entirely and go kill the flanking force, right? So you always want to fight half the Zerg army, either by cutting your army in half with force fields, or if they flank, cut their army off entirely by force fields and then jump on the flanking force. And the Zerg player, their goal is to avoid this, right? So he's trying to get the entire Zerg army hitting from 2 sides here, right? The force fields go off. Did he cut the army in half? No. He only let 2 Hydras and 2 Roaches through. The reason why is because he wants to kill this army over here, right? Killer realizes that these guys here, they're useless. They're not doing any good. So while they're busy not doing any good, these guys have to retreat. Top knows that Killer has to retreat or he's going to take a very poor trade, only fighting with a small army against a very large army. And so he puts a time warp down, so it's harder to retreat. This is the micro you want to do in a 2-base blink Stalker attack. And it's kind of tricky. It looks hard, but it's the goal. You have to know the goal of what you want to accomplish, and then you can start working to get your skills to accomplish it. So we're going to go forward. The fight continues because Killer, backed off. He lost a few units, but all in all, both players are microing very well. And he's going to go in again for another battle, another 2-sided flank, right? Again, this exact same situation. He backs away here. Killer thought he was going to do the force fields. He was worried about fighting in time warp, so he decided to back away from the flank. And then blink on top of the flank. Fight it 2 versus 1. Or by 2 versus 1, I mean entire army versus half the army, because the other half is on the right side of the map. So again, coming in here for another engagement, pushing forward, and then right here, he knows there's a flanking force, right? He knows that's out there. So where does he put the force fields? He does not, if it was the whole army, if there was Zerg units back here, this was all Zerg, right? You put the force fields right here. But because that's not all Zerg, a subtle change, you put the force fields right here. You just block it off because you know there's that flanking army. You don't want to let any of these Hydralists through, and you want to jump on that flanking army. Or you want to let 1 or 2 through maybe, but basically not very many. So we get back in the game here. We can see that. We'll just have it back here. See that? Exactly. Force field's right there. Those units stay back. And then what happened is I think we missed there. But basically he killed a few more units and Killer had to back off again. And then he comes in back again on the attack, right? So the same principle. You fight half the army at once. You force field over here. You attack the half over here. Blink on it. Fight it. And again, right here, he's backing away. And this is actually an important part I'll get back to in a second. He's backing away, and then he hits the force fields right here, cuts this army off, deals with this half the army, right? And then now all of a sudden he's at a point where instead of being down 30 food, he's been so cost efficient, he's only down by 20 food. And now it's getting more and more efficient because there's no roaches, there's hydras anymore. You can just blink right on top of them. And now the food's even. And now all of a sudden with good blink micro and there's not enough Zerg units left anymore, he's going to go ahead and win the game. I mean, Killer hangs around for a while, but Protoss is 20 food up. The game's basically over. So let me back up just a real quick part just to really sum up some of the important aspects here. Is right in this... Oops. Need B one more time. Let's see what we get. Right in this point right here. So actually we'll do it one more time. Right in this point right here. So this is what I want you guys to focus on. Right here as the closing points of this game. The important parts... First of all, before I talk about this really quickly, from a Zerg point of view, pick your battles. Remember how in the gateway timing, Killer waited, he faked the engagement, he backed away, and then once the roaches were out, he fully engaged. So you can choose when to fight. Always try to pick your battles, actually from both sides, Protoss and Zerg, when you have the greater position and the greater numbers. So make sure to do that. It's very, very important in StarCraft 2. But also really I want to focus on force field usage in this game. So going forward in this location, it sounds like it's incredibly, incredibly difficult to hit really good force fields. Like everyone watches MC do it, and you're like, well, that's MC, right? How can I do that? How can I use sentries as good as MC does? Well, you can't use them as good as MC does, but there's a couple of tips and tricks you can do that'll make your force field usage get a little better, but most importantly, it'll make you get better at using force fields over time, and you'll basically teach you how to improve your micro. And the 2 things to think about when you're in any situation where force fields are important is 1 is to stay calm. The worst thing you can do is just click the force field button like a maniac And then what happens is you're in a situation where, oops. You hit like, you hit like force field here, 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 here. And you've got like 18 force fields, and the Zerg just goes around here and then they kill you, and you're like, wow, how do people do force fields well, right? No. So stay calm. It's important to recognize that you actually have a minimum of 1, 2, 3 seconds hit force fields. And it doesn't sound like a lot of time, 1, 2, 3 seconds. But take a moment to sit back and count in your head 1, 2, 3. And think about that and then hitting your force fields versus hitting them instantly. And how much of a difference that'll affect your accuracy. So, I mean, the best players do them within half a second. The worst players do them in 0 seconds. They instantly throw out those force fields. So, and the better players do them in 1 second of seeing the engagement happen. So, 1, 2, 3 seconds waiting, that's fine. Start waiting. It's better to wait 3 seconds and then hit great force fields than it is to hit really bad force fields. So make sure to stay calm, take a breath, and then hit your force fields. And the very important part about knowing how to hit those force fields is you should know the map and know where you want to place them beforehand. So you're top. You know you're going to end up backing away this avenue, right? You're going to know that's going to happen at some point, or it might happen at some point. And you know that what might happen is your opponent might charge after you. And so where do you want to put force fields? You should already know, okay, I want to place one here, right? One here, one here, one here, and that's it, right? 4 force fields. You should kind of already know as you're backing up, what's the shortest line that my opponent's going to chase me through to hit those force fields perfectly. So if you have an idea of where you want to place those force fields ahead of time, then you can just take a moment to breathe, okay? Wait for them to cross that line. Boom, hit my force fields. And it's not something where it's like panically instantly hitting them. It's something where you're waiting for your opponent to go over that like red zone. Like they're going to touch the zone where all of a sudden I'm going to nail them with the force fields, and then I'm going to win the game. And it's exactly what Top does here. We're going to watch this game from his perspective. And look at how he backs away, right? We're going to play this on slow speed, so it's a little more obvious. He's backing away. The Zerg's chasing him. He's not hitting force fields. He's not hitting force fields. He's worrying about micro this front, and then all of a sudden he hits him, right? He knew 3 seconds ahead of time when he wanted to hit those force fields. And if you know 3 seconds ahead of time when you want to hit him, you can stay calm, and you can hit him much, much more accurately. Shouts out to the third segment of today's show. Take a short break and beyond to the Q&A.